My girlfriend slept with her therapist and tried to justify it as healing, so I took her to therapy. By dumping her in the session, I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I never thought I'd fall in love again after my last breakup nearly broke me. I don't say that lightly. That relationship ended in a kind of slow emotional collapse. No screaming fights, no cheating, just years of feeling invisible until I finally snapped. After that, I told myself I was done with anything serious. Casual dates, surface-level connections. Maybe, but nothing that could hurt me again. And then Claire walked into my life, like she'd been written into a book I didn't know I needed. We met at this indie bookstore's open mic night. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I'd been dragged along by a friend. Claire read a short piece about anxiety and grief, and it was haunting, beautiful, honest. She spoke like someone who'd already lived through fire and come out softer, not harder. After the reading, I ended up beside her in the cramped poetry aisle. We talked about everything from Van Gogh to vinyl records. She was studying to become an art therapist, and when I told her I worked in UX design, she smiled and said, "So you're into how things feel." That stuck with me. The first time we went out, it was coffee. Then another, then wine and long walks and nights that bled into mornings where we didn't want to leave the bed. There was a gentleness to her that made it easy to let down my guard. She was open about her mental health, never oversharing, just real. And when she listened to me talk about my last relationship, she didn't flinch. She just nodded and said, "You deserved better," for the first time in years. I stopped bracing for the rug to be pulled out from under me. I started to believe love could be safe again, but I didn't know that letting my guard down was exactly what made me vulnerable to what came next, the months that followed. With Claire felt like a kind of peace I didn't know existed. We fell into an easy rhythm-making dinner together after work, arguing playfully over music while washing dishes, then collapsing onto the couch to watch something neither of us paid attention to. Her presence made the apartment feel alive. She filled every empty corner I'd learned to ignore. After a year, we moved in together. It wasn't a grand decision, it just felt right. We combined our books, shared groceries, built a budget, and even started a someday savings jar for travel. There was this quiet domesticity that felt healing. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I told my friends, she's the kind of person you build a future with. Claire was the one who convinced me to try therapy. She said, "You've carried too much for too long. You deserve to unload some of it." She even helped me find a therapist through her school's referral network. It felt good, having a partner who wanted me to heal, not just survive. We'd spend hours talking about emotions, what safety looked like, how to communicate without ego. She had this mantra she repeated often: healing doesn't mean hurting others. I used to admire how centered she sounded when she said it. I told her once, "You make me want to be better." She smiled and replied softly, "That's all I've ever wanted, for us to grow together." When she began shadowing a licensed therapist for her graduate program, I was genuinely proud. She'd come home glowing, talking about breakthroughs her clients made and how meaningful it was to help people open up. I didn't realize then how deeply she was taking that philosophy into her own life, or that soon she'd start healing in ways that would break me all over again. At first, it was harmless. Claire would come home from her shadowing sessions with little anecdotes, nothing that broke confidentiality, just vague stories about how people carry more pain than we realize. She'd talk about the breakthroughs her mentor, therapist, Dr. Evan, helped guide. "He's brilliant," she'd say. "He sees patterns most people miss." I was glad she admired him. I mean, he was helping shape her into the therapist she wanted to be. But slowly, her stories shifted. It wasn't just about clients anymore. It was about her, about how he saw her. She mentioned how he'd gently challenge her, help her reframe old wounds. One night over dinner, she said something that made me pause. "He told me I have a habit of shrinking myself to make others comfortable. Even in my relationship," I looked up from my plate, caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. She shrugged, like it was nothing. "Just something we're exploring. Don't overthink it." But I did overthink it. How could I not? After that, it became more frequent. She'd toss out comments like, "Evan says emotional enmeshment can feel like love, but be rooted in control." Or, "Some people confuse stability with stagnation." I started to feel like a patient in her analysis, like I was being observed instead of loved. She was quiet during meals, more distracted during conversations. I chalked it up to workload stress. Grad school, long hours. It made sense. But then came the nights she started staying out later. Post-session walks, she claimed. I just need time to process everything. I trusted her. Of course I did. She'd never given me a reason not to. Something in me shifted. A quiet voice I tried to silence kept whispering, "You're losing her, and you don't even know why yet." The emotional distance between us kept widening, but Claire called it growth. "I'm learning how to take up space," she'd say when I asked why she seemed so far away. "It's not about you, it's about me healing." I tried to respect that. I wanted her to feel supported, not caged. But it was hard not to notice how often her phone buzzed late at night. How she'd smile at texts she wouldn't show me. How she suddenly guarded her journal like it was a holy relic. One night, she fell asleep on the couch. Her journal was left cracked open on the coffee table. I didn't mean to snoop. I swear I didn't, but the words were right there bold. Bleeding across the page, sometimes healing means breaking free. Last night was electric. I finally felt seen, really seen. I stared at that sentence for what felt like hours. My stomach knotted. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. Who the hell was she talking about? When I gently woke her up and asked, she blinked, dazed. "What are you talking about?" "Your journal," I said. "What happened last night?" She hesitated. Then, without flinching, she replied, "You're overreacting." That was her go-to line. A quiet weapon dressed in calm. But I pushed. And that's when she looked me in the eyes and said, "Okay, yes. Evan and I, we crossed a boundary." My heart dropped. "Crossed a boundary," I repeated. It was an emotional moment. It wasn't planned. It just happened. And honestly, it helped me understand parts of myself I didn't even know were there. She tried to explain it like it was some kind of spiritual breakthrough, like betrayal was part of her self-care routine. I sat there in stunned silence, thinking, she didn't just cheat, she's trying to turn it into therapy. And the worst part, I hadn't even begun to understand how twisted it really was. After Claire confessed, I couldn't speak. My throat felt like it had closed up, like every word I wanted to scream got stuck somewhere behind my ribs. She sat there on the edge of our couch, calm, like she was explaining the results of a personality quiz, not the fact that she had slept with her therapist. "It wasn't like that," she said again, her voice soft. "It wasn't about sex. It was about connection. It was healing." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the only sound I could make without breaking apart. I asked, "You call cheating on your partner healing?" She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "You don't get it." Evan and I had a session that got really emotional. He helped me access something I'd been repressing, and things just flowed naturally from there. I got up and walked into the kitchen, my legs shaky. I gripped the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles went white. From the other room, she said, "I didn't plan it, but I don't regret it either." That sentence hit harder than the betrayal itself. I don't regret it. Later that night, when she went to bed, I opened her laptop. I know it wasn't right. But I wasn't looking for closure anymore. I was looking for the truth. She wasn't giving me, and there it was, an email thread between her and Evan, hidden under a folder labeled Class Resources. Dozens of messages, some during sessions, some at midnight. Lines like, "I've never felt so emotionally safe with anyone." Being with you makes me feel real. Last night changed everything. I wasn't just watching a relationship fall apart. I was watching her build a new one in the shadows of our life together, and in that moment, standing alone in the kitchen with her laptop screen glowing in the dark, I knew something was broken beyond repair. But what I didn't realize was that she was about to try and convince me it never really counted as cheating. The next morning, I didn't confront her immediately. I wanted to understand what kind of person could do this and still sleep peacefully beside me. Claire poured herself a cup of coffee like it was any other day. She hummed as she stirred oat milk into her mug. I watched her like a stranger, wondering if I'd ever really known her at all. When I finally spoke, it wasn't loud. "Just Claire, I read the emails." She froze mid-sip. Her eyes flicked to mine, then to the floor. "You went through my stuff. You slept with your therapist." She exhaled like I was exhausting her. Evan and I connected, yes, but it wasn't about cheating. It was a therapeutic moment. A boundary got blurred, but it was meaningful. You're reacting from a place of control, not compassion. That's when the gaslighting began in full force. You think I wanted this to happen. I was vulnerable. I was doing the work. Healing isn't linear, and sometimes bodies respond before minds catch up. I stared at her, stunned. Do you even hear yourself? You're trying to make this sound like it was some kind of spiritual exercise. She didn't blink, because it was. You wouldn't understand. You've always been emotionally guarded. Evan helped me open doors I didn't even know were locked. It was like she had rehearsed the language of healing so well that she could weaponize it at will. I wasn't her boyfriend anymore, was just an obstacle to her self-actualization. She even had the audacity to say, honestly, this could be a turning point for us. Maybe now you'll finally see what I've been trying to say about connection and truth. That's when something in me cracked. Not with anger, but with clarity. I realized I wasn't losing her. I'd already lost her. The only question left was how I'd leave her in a way. She couldn't twist into a redemption arc. I didn't scream. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't leave that night. That's what she probably expected, some dramatic meltdown. She could label as emotional dysregulation or fear of abandonment. No, I went quiet. And in that silence, something powerful shifted. I stopped arguing. I stopped asking where she was going, or why she came home late, or who she was texting. I just let her have the space she said she needed. I slept in the guest room. I journaled everything. I documented dates, quotes, screenshots. I started therapy, again not the kind Claire always talked about in abstract metaphors, but real therapy, where the pain was raw and the clarity was hard, earned. At first, she seemed relieved. I think she thought I'd accepted her twisted version of growth. She started acting more centered, offering passive little affirmations like, I think this phase is really good for us. I'd nod, pretend to agree, smile just enough to keep her comfortable. But inside, I was done. I wasn't preparing to win, her Bakai was preparing to end it right. Not with a text, not with another argument in our kitchen. No, I wanted her to face the reality of what she'd done in a space she couldn't manipulate. So, I booked a couples therapy session. I told her I wanted help navigating our communication issues. She lit up, smug in that quiet way she did when she thought she had the moral high ground. I'm so proud of you, she said. This is exactly what healing looks like. I smiled. Exactly. She had no idea I wasn't walking into that room to save us. I was walking in to leave her face to face, truth to truth, in the only language she seemed to respect, therapy. The morning of the session, Claire was practically glowing. She wore her favorite linen jumpsuit and carried a notebook filled with her usual self-reflections. She actually said, I'm excited to share what I've learned. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because of how deeply she believed she could script her way out of anything if she dressed it up in therapeutic language. The office was small, but cozy neutral tones. Soft lighting, 2 armchairs angled toward each other with a box of tissues in the middle. Claire immediately leaned in, her posture open, her voice soft and composed. I think we've both been triggered by old patterns, she told the therapist. This time has given us space to notice our projections. I'm hopeful about where we're heading. She turned to me, eyes wide with practiced empathy. I'm proud of you for showing up today. The therapist turned to me. What are you hoping to get from this session? And that's when I took a slow breath, reached into my bag, and pulled out a folder. I didn't look at Claire. Not yet. I handed the folder to the therapist. Inside were printed emails, screenshots of messages, a photo of Claire's journal entry, and a typed timeline everything I'd uncovered. Dates, quotes, proof. Then I turned to Claire. I'm not here to fix anything, I said. I'm here to leave. Her smile cracked. What? What is this? She asked, her voice suddenly sharp. This is me giving you the honesty you say you crave so much, I said. You slept with your therapist. You called it healing. You justified it. But it was betrayal. And I need closure, not gaslighting. The room went cold. The therapist didn't interrupt. She simply looked at Claire and asked, Is this true? Claire blinked rapidly, her voice faltering. This isn't fair. He ambushed me. But for once, she wasn't the one in control, and she knew it. Claire's hands trembled as she reached for the folder. Skimming through the pages like she could somehow blink away the truth, her voice cracked with a mixture of panic and indignation. "This is manipulative. You set me up." The therapist remained calm. "Claire, are these documents authentic?" Claire didn't answer. Her silence was loud. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I just sat there, watching her fall apart under the weight of her own lies. "You told me healing doesn't mean hurting others," I said. "You repeated that line like a mantra. But what you really meant was that your pain matters, and mine doesn't." She looked up, eyes glassy. "You don't understand what it's like to feel." Cracked open. Evan helped me see myself. "No," I said flatly. "He saw an opportunity, and you let him exploit it. Then you turned around and exploited me to justify it." The therapist, to her credit, didn't soften the reality. She spoke directly to Claire. "What happened between you and your mentor wasn't just a boundary violation, it was unethical and potentially illegal. If you were my client, I would be obligated to report him immediately." Claire sat frozen. Her world, this carefully constructed identity of enlightened healing and emotional awareness, was starting to implode. I stood up slowly. "I'll be moving out by the end of the week. The apartment's lease is in my name, so I'd appreciate it if you found somewhere else to stay." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person standing in front of her. "This isn't you," she whispered. "You're right," I said. "This is the version of me that finally stopped confusing loyalty with self-betrayal." I thanked the therapist, nodded once to Claire, and walked out of that room with nothing but my car keys and the kind of silence that screams, "We're done." And for the first time in a long time, I felt clean. I didn't look back when I left the therapist's office. I didn't need to. The silence in that room told me everything I'd ever wanted to hear. She finally had to sit with herself, with no script, no soft language, no audience, just consequences. I spent the next few days boxing up her things. No rage, no music playing in the background, no dramatic moments, just silence and tape. I left her stuff neatly packed in the hall closet, labeled. I sent her a single text. "Your boxers are in the front closet. Please collect them by Friday." "I won't be home," she didn't reply, but the shift came quickly. 2 days later, she called Meet Weiss. Then again. Then came the texts, long, teary ones. "Can't we just talk through this with more understanding? You weaponize therapy, you know? That wasn't healing. I feel completely abandoned." I didn't respond. Then came the guilt tactics. "You've ruined my career before it's even started. I was hurting, and Evan understood me in ways you never could." Still, silence. By the end of the week, she left a voice message. She was crying. Real tears, or maybe performative ones, I couldn't tell anymore. She said Evan had distanced himself and that she'd filed a report. But it felt like a betrayal to even do that. And then the truth slipped out. He told me I wasn't the first woman he'd connected with during supervision. There it was, her epiphany. But it wasn't for Met, was for her. A crash landing after a fantasy flight. I didn't respond to that voicemail either. Asterisk, she came back one last time, just before the lease ended, to grab her things. She stood in the doorway like a ghost of herself messy bun. No makeup, wearing the same linen jumpsuit she'd worn to that final therapy session. "I thought you were the safe one," she said quietly. Met her eyes. I was, and then I closed the door. I thought that would be the end of it, me closing the door and her fading into the rear view. But the real unraveling had only just begun. About 3 weeks later, I got a call from a mutual friend, someone Claire and I had both met through a local mental health advocacy group. Her voice was low, cautious. "Did you hear about Evan?" I hadn't, but when she told me, it all clicked. He was under investigation. A formal complaint had been filed by Claire herself, and it turned out he had a history, not just with her, 3 other women. All students, all connections that blurred the line between therapy and exploitation. Apparently, Claire's complaint had opened the floodgates. The university launched an internal review. His license was suspended pending further inquiry. I didn't celebrate. Honestly, I just felt hollow. Like watching a train wreck that I'd been in, but somehow survived. Claire posted a long cryptic caption on Instagram around that time. Sometimes the path to truth is paved with betrayal, both received and delivered. I'm learning. I'm growing. Please be gentle. Her comments were full of support. You're so brave, proud of you for reclaiming your voice. Growth isn't linear. None of them knew the full story. And I didn't need them to. I wasn't going to air it out online or drag her name through the mud. I'd already said everything I needed to in that therapy room. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. I found a new apartment, changed my number, switched therapists, focused on work, went on walks without checking my phone for the first time in a long time. I wasn't tangled in someone else's version of healing. I was living in mine, quietly, fully, without performance. And the irony of it all, the woman who once told me I was emotionally unavailable had shattered herself on the very thing she claimed would fix her. She lost both of us, and I never looked back. People always talk about revenge like it's some grand explosion, flames fall out, a triumphant scream in the aftermath. But that's not how it happened for me. My revenge was silence. No confrontations on social media. No warning texts to her next boyfriend. No petty one-liners to mutual friends. Just distance, real, clean, unshakable distance. I didn't need to. I just became unreachable in every way that mattered. I became someone she couldn't explain away in her next therapy session. Someone she couldn't recast as the villain in her story arc. Because the truth is, when someone like Claire loses control of the narrative, they lose everything. I saw her once, after it all, maybe 6 months later. I was grabbing coffee near the university where she used to intern. She was sitting outside alone, notebook in hand, staring at the blank page like it had betrayed her. She looked up. Our eyes met. And in that split second, I saw the recognition, the regret, the longing to say something. But I just gave her the smallest nod and walked away. She doesn't get a second chance at closure, because closure is earned, not stolen from the wreckage you created. Now, I'm in a different city. I share an apartment with my dog. I go to therapy for myself, not to make someone else feel more enlightened. I'm dating against lowly, intentionally, without trying to fix or be fixed. And when people ask what happened with my last relationship, I just say, she tried to find herself, but lost me in the process. Because that's the truth. She called it healing. I called it betrayal. And the moment I left her in that therapy chair with nothing but the truth, that was the day I finally healed.